Gregory Rousseau isn't human. I know what you're thinking. Tell me something that I don't know. Well, I reviewed the tape, watched every snap, and I got a lot to talk about his evaluation from this past season. Also, Miami has 8 players that's going to be in the combine, 8 players that are draft eligible, and I have a special guest, Ryan Roberts. He's going to come on and tell me where these players can expect to go, improvements, and he has some interesting things to say about Jeff Thomas. Definitely want to hear that. And also, we're introducing the Barbershop Talk. This time, JT Sports joins in on a little barbershop talk. Hey, today's a good show. You watching Canes After Dark? Let's get it.
Welcome to the Canes After Dark podcast, your #1 late-night show for Miami Hurricanes fans. And here is your host, Grant Long.
Before I really dive into my in-depth thoughts on Gregory Rousseau's season, because I tell people all the time, when you watch film and you study film, it's different from just watching the game. And over the season, I just watched the game. And over the past week, the last 2 weeks, I dove into his film and watched every snap. And, spoiler alert, I still think he's amazing. But it really was crazy, the different things that he did. But before I dive into that, I want to answer some questions about the structure of this podcast. Right now, we're in the off season, okay? So you can expect a podcast every Friday. Now, for the Patreon members, since you're a Patreon member, you get access a day early. So you get this on Thursday. If you want to become a Patreon member, select any tier, whether $1 or more, and you get exclusive content no matter the tier. $1 and you're in there like swimwear. So Patreon members get this on Thursday. Everybody else gets this on Friday. And you can expect this podcast every Friday. If you want daily content, you can go to my NMD TV, and I post college football and Miami Hurricanes content 24/7. Now, once the season starts, I'm looking to go to 3 pods a week, an instant reaction pod, a game preview pod, and another type of pod. So 2 or 3 during the season. But I wanted to let everybody know, when you're waking up from Thirsty Thursdays, you had a little bit of drinks, and it's Friday morning, and you're happy that it's about to be on the weekend, you can expect the Canes After Dark podcast Friday morning, getting your Friday and your weekend started off right. Now, Gregory Rousseau, it's nothing new. This isn't spectacular when I say that Gregory Rousseau is a beast. He is a man amongst boys. But when I really looked at the tape, I realized a couple things, okay? Last year, Gregory Rousseau only started 7 games and finished with 54 tackles, 19.5 tackles for loss, and 15.5 sacks. Think about that, guys. He only started 7 games. 7 games and had 19.5 tackles for loss and 15.5 sacks. That's crazy. Another thing is, even though he only started 7 games, when I was watching this film, I noticed that he rotated a lot. Scott Patchen and the rotation was going a lot. Towards the end of the season, of course, they played Gregory Rousseau more. But in my opinion, I don't think Gregory Rousseau played enough when you really go back and look at how many times he got pulled out of the game. The first couple games, he didn't play much at all. Scott Patchen got majority of the snaps. Then later on in the season, there still was rotation, but Greg Rousseau played a lot. I realized that although he's great, there's some things he can improve on. But let me talk about the stuff that I thought was amazing. 6'7", 253 pounds, and they played him at several different positions. They played him interior line, outside the line, defensive end, stand-up end. They had him going into zones. They had him spying the quarterback. They had him guarding a running back halfway down the field. And look, I'll be honest with you because I want to stay consistent. I'm not a big fan of Gregory Rousseau guarding running backs and doing things like that because he's so good at pass rushing. But it was crazy that a 6'7", 253-pound was that versatile to do things. I mean, stride for stride, perfect coverage with the running back. I mean, having zone discipline, doing hooks from hook to flats like a defensive back, switching off like a defensive back. This guy is special. And that's before I even get into his amazing pass rushing ability. This man was so powerful, was so long, he was just tossing 300-pound tackles out the way with ease. One play in particular, Florida International, 3rd and 1, he powers off the line with a power rush to the outside shoulder, drives the tight end back into the running back to make the tackle, all using nice leverage and one arm. It was amazing to see. And then you saw plays like Virginia when Bryce Perkins jukes 2-3 defenders and he thinks he's about to take off running and bam! Gregory Rousseau knocks him and forces a fumble. You saw plays like the Louisville game where Al Blaze gets an interception, but it's because of Gregory Rousseau. Actually, on the play was designed to open up Michael Pinkney to come around the edge and sack the quarterback. And Gregory Rousseau's responsibility was to slant inside to occupy the guard in the center. But what ends up happening is Gregory Rousseau is so disruptive, he ends up just tossing the tackle into the guard, pushing him almost into the quarterback, applying the pressure before Pinkney can even get around on his stunt, and that ends up causing the interception for Al Blades. It was spectacular. I watch a play against Pittsburgh where this guy literally one arm. When you're rushing and you do a power stab, you want to go left, inside or outside the tackle. He chooses the outside and he drives this man back with the same arm, slinging him off, planting his foot and going to get a sack. We have somebody special. And I only wonder what will happen with more experience. I wonder what would happen bringing in Quincy Roche. It's a lot of high expectations, and rightfully so, for Gregory Rousseau. Now, I did mention I think there is some things he can improve on. There was a couple times where he's learning the position. That's what's crazy to me. It's crazy that he's learning the position. He is a baby at this position. He still can learn the nuance of the game, the counter moves. He needs consistency with his counter moves because he's used to just power through players, bull rush or power stab to drive back. But when he couldn't do that, it was like the tackle or the guard, if he was inside, they won. This offseason, if he learns a consistent, doesn't mean he never does it, but if he can learn consistently to add different type of moves to his arsenal, boy. And then we bring Quincy Roche, which is going to take pressure off of him, boy. And then we got Jalen Phillips, who should be back mentally and physically. Oh my goodness. 19.5 tackles for loss, 15.5 sacks in 7 games. That is amazing. A guy that did it against the run and rushing the passer. This is a guy that's going to get a lot of hype, but rightfully so. The kid is humble, and I think this is somebody, if you've been at the last couple spring games or you've had people tell you what's been going on at the spring game, Gregory Rousseau has dominated the spring game, but we never knew what he could do until he stepped on the field last year, and now he just has to build on that. We have one of the most destructive forces in college football in Gregory Rousseau, and it's somebody that can improve his pad level, improve with his counter moves. And if he does those two things, no telling how many sacks he could get. Because right now, he's already a disruptive beast. To me, it's like the kid isn't even human. If you want more of a visual of this, go check out my YouTube channel where I did a specific film breakdown, and you can actually see the plays, not just visualize them through the podcast. Just type in NMD TV Gregory Rousseau and it'll pop up. And man, it's a sight to see the type of talent that we have. I looked at a mock draft for 2021, and Miami actually has a couple guys that could go in the top 10. Brevin Jordan and Gregory Rousseau. I know this has been talked about on the timeline, but it's amazing. Now, people told us that we didn't have talent on this team. Miami only won 6 games. We didn't have talent. Well, we had 8 players invited to the NFL Combine. 8 players that has a chance to get drafted with the NFL draft come up. Come on, we got talent. We just got to get everything else down. And speaking of those guys that's going to be drafted, I got my guy, Ryan. He's going to come on the show after the break, and he's going to tell us where these guys will get drafted, the positives and negatives of these guys. He's going to tell me who he thinks is the best out of this group. I asked him who's better, Trayvon Hill or Jonathan Garvin. He's going to tell us. And then for you Miami Dolphins fans, he's even going to give you his opinion on who they should select with 3 picks in the first round. So a lot to get to today. So let's go ahead and get Ryan from the NFL Draft Bible on the line. Let's go. Real quick, guys, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters. Because of you guys, I'm able to put out consistent content and better quality content. If you're thinking about becoming a Patreon member, I do want to let you know you'll get access to a 24/7 group chat. You'll get the podcast a day earlier. And during the season, you'll get access to the instant reaction podcast. So you'll get to hear my thoughts podcast form right after every Miami Hurricane game and a lot of other exclusive content. Get signed up today, www.patreon.com/NMDTV. Even if you sign up for the $1 tier, you still get access to all exclusive content. If you want to support more, I'll be forever grateful, because all that is going into my ultimate goal of becoming a full-time content creator in 2020 and also upgrading equipment for the show. I really want to thank you ahead of time, and I definitely want to give a shout out to those who are already signed up. Now back to Canes After Dark. All right, guys, we got Ryan Roberts on the line. He does film breakdowns for NFL Draft Bible. He writes for the Pro Football Ready, NFL Draft Lounge, and with the first pick. Ryan, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Grant. How are you, man?
Man, doing good. NFL Draft coming around, so it's pretty fun. Get to evaluate the college prospects and think about the draft and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm lucky enough to get up to Indianapolis this year for the Combine, so I'm super excited, man.
Oh, man, this is going to be your first year going to the Combine?
Yeah, first year. It's been a kind of a whirlwind this year, meeting some new people and getting some new opportunities. So, yeah, first time up in Indianapolis in general. I've only been through Indiana, went to Notre Dame Stadium in South Bend a couple years ago. So this is my first time in Indianapolis, so I'm really excited about it.
Awesome. That's going to be dope, man. And, just reading off your profile and seeing what you've been doing, you basically do everything for the draft, right?
We for a while now been doing, podcasts, done a lot of interviews with prospects from last year, this year, a lot of freelance writing, scouting reports, articles, just doing it all. I've been working on the NFL Draft Bible draft guide that's coming out in a few weeks here as well. So, it's been a lot of new experiences, a lot of fun. So, it's draft all year round for me. So it's just a lot of fun,
Okay, so the Miami Hurricanes, they're actually going to have 8 players invited to the Combine, so that's pretty cool. And I definitely want to talk about what you think about those players. But I just kind of, in general, when you go into looking at a prospect, what's kind of the process of you checking out a prospect that maybe you've never heard of? How do you go about doing that and forming your opinion of them?
It's a really interesting conversation, really, because I talk to a lot of different draft guys on a daily basis, and everyone I feel like has their own method, their own process. For me personally, I like to get 3 games on them, a kind of a cold watch. I don't want to know too much about them. I watch those 3 games, and then I'll go back and I start to do research on them. I like to listen to interviews. I like to read into their backstory a little bit, kind of understand them a little bit from a personal level. And then as I get back to closer to the draft, I like to go rewatch those games if possible, and then obviously add on to that game list as more games in all 22 or cut-ups on YouTube are available. So I really try to kind of do like a twofold. I want to know the personal side of things, and obviously the film is the most important thing. So it's really fun, though. Just your question. Everyone has their own process. For me, cold watch, some personal information, and then going back and watching and make sure that I'm seeing everything that I saw the first time around.
Okay. Is there a prospect that maybe the mainstream media or a lot of people were against this prospect, but you kind of said, no, this is going to be a guy down the line that you need to watch? Is there a prospect in your past that you could think of that you were really right on that excited you, once he got drafted and had a good career in the NFL or anything like that?
I feel like you always have your hits and your misses. I mean, one guy that I know, I watched Luke Kuechly for a long time at Boston College, and he was an incredible player. And a lot of people going up to the combine process were wondering what type of athlete he was, and they were trying to second guess him. And he became one of my favorite football players. Obviously, he ran the 4.58 or whatever he ran at the combine, and he kind of checked those boxes. But I just feel like he's one guy that really pops in my head. If I had a guy this year, more recently, I would say that I feel like a lot of people are really just overthinking Andrew Thomas from Georgia. I think that he's still my number 1 offensive tackle on my board personally, and I just feel like some guys look a little too much into the flash, and they just kind of overlook that there's baseline attributes that you need, which a guy like Andrew Thomas hits all of those. And I think that just because he's in a class with guys like Jedrick Wills and Tristan Wirfs, who are excellent athletes, that his athleticism is a little undersold, but he's a guy is currently getting overlooked, in my opinion.
Okay. So have you had a chance to look at the 8 guys that Miami's has going into the combine, into the draft this year? Have you had a chance to look over some of those guys?
Yeah, I have, and I will say 4 out of 8 I've done my final breakdown, my final write-ups on, and the other 4 guys I've done my preliminary stuff, and I'm just waiting to get to their final film. So really excited about this class overall. That's why, when you brought this up to me, I was excited to talk about it. It's like you said, 8 guys going to the combine. That's a high number, and despite the struggles that Miami has had this past season, there's a ton of talent coming out, and a couple guys that I'm really excited about from this list.
So just from the guys from this list and that you've done, your film watch on and research on, who do you think has the most talent that projects to have the best career going into the NFL out of this class?
The easy answer for me would be Jeff Thomas, the wide receiver. I feel like he's had some baggage off the field, which teams will have to do their research on when he goes to the combine and in the individual workouts and the meetings individually, and that's probably even more important than what he's actually going to test, because I have a feeling he's going to run in the 4.3s. He's going to test out of the world. When I see him, I feel like he checks so many of the boxes. He's not the big physical guy that you want, but the releases off the line of scrimmage are exemplary. He makes some plays through traffic, through contact that you don't expect for a guy's size, and then he has those speed attributes. He's a vertical-based receiver that can play a little on the outside as like a Z receiver, but also in the slot. I feel like you could do so many different things, get him on mismatches, whether as a drag or running something more vertical-based. And I'm really excited about Jeff Thomas, and I hope that he checks those boxes as far as the off-field character concerns, because I feel like the sky's the limit if you really start to get down into this guy's overall potential.
I agree 100% with that, because Jeff Thomas we switched offensive coordinators, so his numbers didn't look as great as last year. But when you look at his film, man, he has I like to call him the GPS tracker because he tracks the ball so well when it's up in the air for a guy his size. And then I've always said once Jeff Thomas goes to that combine and he runs that 40, anybody who didn't know about him will soon know about him because the guy is blazing fast.
Oh, absolutely, man. If you're a guy that follows recruiting heavily, I mean, he was a guy coming out of, I think he's originally from out Illinois, right? Because he almost transferred to Illinois this past offseason. And he's a guy that I was super excited about. You know, he kind of fits that Miami playmaker kind of thing going on down there. And like I said, I just hope he really checks the boxes as far as off-field stuff because there's a lot to work with, man. I mean, if we're talking about a potential day 2 talent, now I feel like he might not be the highest player drafted of the Miami guys just because we have to see what the character stuff is. But talent-wise, I think firmly he would be somewhere second, third round if it was just solely based on talent.
Okay, so Miami has 2 defensive linemen. We have John Garvin, and then we had a grad transfer to come over in Trayvon Hill. Both of those guys will be at the combine. Both of them playing defensive linemen. Trayvon Hill is more of a stand-up guy, but can play with his hand in the ground. Which one do you like better out of the 2?
I actually like Garvin a lot more, and it was kind of a mixed bag this year. I didn't love his film in 2019 as far as Garvin, but when I went back to his 2018, a little more in better shape. He looked a little quicker off the line. He seemed like he was moving better in space. Trayvon Hill, who is a guy, like you mentioned, transfer over from Virginia Tech, he shows flashes, but there's just not consistency to his game. He's a stand-up rusher, like you said. He's going to have to be because he's listed at like 233, 234. He just doesn't have a physical element to his game. So if I had to bank on traits right now, I would definitely take Garvin out of those 2.
Who do you think will be the highest drafted Miami Hurricane out of this group?
If I was a betting man, I would probably go Quarterman, Shaq Quarterman, the inside linebacker. I feel like he presents himself as probably the safest player. There's guys like Garvin and Jeff Thomas and maybe even Trey Bandy, the corner, that might have much higher ceilings to what they potentially could do, but I feel like there's just such a safety with what Shaq Quarterman does inside. He's not going to blow you away with short area quickness, change of direction, but he's going to be able to do consistent run fits inside, and he's a guy that you can depend on, whether it is, filling the right gap, being a quarterback of a defense. He has those traits to at least transition to a first and second down player at the very least. So he's kind of the safer pick out of this group, but I feel like a lot of things what he does baseline are what NFL evaluators are looking for, at least on the early first and second down run stopping opportunities.
All right, a lot of people, I guess the narrative with Shaq Quarterman is he wasn't going to be fast enough for the NFL. His lateral speed and coverage of, the big, fast tight end. What would you say to the people who has that narrative of him?
I feel like athletically Shaq is a pretty explosive player just in a straight line. I feel like there are some concerns definitely with him laterally. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's ever going to be a huge producer on passing downs, just because I feel like if he is going to be that player, at best he's going to have to improve angles. I feel like his angles of attack are not the best going to the perimeter, even as a run support player. But I feel like in a straight line, if we're talking just a linear athlete, I feel like Shaq's fine. It's just I think that he's a little stiff transitioning laterally.
Okay, and we've made it through this conversation without even mentioning DJ Dallas. Now, I'm a big fan of DJ Dallas, running back. He started off playing wide receiver, then got moved to running back, and I thought he made the transition pretty well. Definitely had some big-time moments at Miami. What are your thoughts on DJ Dallas?
He's a fun guy, man. Like, he really is. Like you said, he came in and he was kind of I know he was a high school quarterback and he was trying to find his fit at the next level. And he was a guy that early on in his career, you saw him run a lot of jet sweeps. They did stuff with him in the pass game. And then obviously the last couple years, he's been a more traditional running back. And I feel like the tools are obvious. He does some things in the screen game that are awesome. When you get this guy into the open space, he makes guys miss. He has that opportunity. He's a tough guy to corral, and he has really nice contact balance considering his limited time as a traditional running back. I feel like he's just a little behind the eight ball as far as instincts as a running back, being able to understand where gaps are going to potentially come open in zone concepts, different things like that. But if we're talking about a high upside guy, I feel like DJ Dallas is getting really slept on in this crew, and I feel like he has every physical tool you would look at, especially in a league that more and more is wanting guys that can take advantage of space, that can manipulate space. I feel like DJ Dallas is going to be a better NFL player than he was a college player.
Okay, and then the last couple guys are just, what are your thoughts on KJ Osborne, the wide receiver, and Michael Pinkney, the other linebacker that's coming out with Shaq Quarterman?
So a couple notes I have on KJ. Obviously, he's a transfer from Buffalo, grad transfer, and he got a little bit of buzz going into Miami just because he was a really rock-solid player for Buffalo, along with Anthony Johnson and Tyree Jackson throwing him the football. And I just feel like there's a smoothness to him. You know, he does the things he could play. He could play inside in the slot. He could play some Z. You can motion him, short motions. You could do a little different things with him as far as alignment. And there's just a consistency to him. Solid hands. He does everything well. I just don't know if he's a dynamic athlete in any way. But I feel like he's a guy that can carve a niche. He could do some of the dirty work, blocking. He shows a lot of effort in that area. So KJ, I feel like he's just a really solid football player. I don't know if you'll hear his name until later in the day three, or maybe even as an undrafted guy, but he's a guy that has intangibles that could potentially make a roster. And last guy that you mentioned, Michael Pinkney. Oh man, he was frustrating for me, honestly. I watched him, and you see the tackle for loss production, you see some of the sack production, 4-year starter. And I remember when he was a freshman, everyone was really excited about that whole group, him and McLeod and Quarterman, and everyone was really excited about their future. And I just didn't feel like Pinkney got any better. He's a little undersized, and I just feel like he was not the athlete that he was originally billed at. He's just kind of a high cut, little awkward in his movements. So he's a guy that I think is just going to have to create a niche on special teams early on, and then hopefully he's able to develop into a more serviceable player where he can get some defensive snaps. But I would say out of all these guys, Pinkney was probably my most frustrating watch overall.
Okay. Looking at this list, does Miami have anybody that's going to go in the first round?
I don't think so. I mean, like we said, if Jeff Thomas didn't have the off-field stuff, he's a guy that's, a day two talent, so he could always have snuck in there. But I feel like there's nobody right now that I would look at and be like, that's a guy who's potentially going to go in the first. If Quarterman was maybe a little better of an athlete, you might kind of talk me into it. But I definitely wouldn't put money on it if that's what you're thinking.
Okay, guys, we're talking to Ryan Roberts from the NFL Draft Bible. Let's say we're talking 3-4 years down the line, who's going to be the Miami Hurricane that we're still talking about out of this class?
I mean, we talked about him a lot, but I would say as long as everything is, straight on off the field, Jeff Thomas is definitely that guy. Man. He just strikes me as a guy, man. Like New Orleans might, pick him up in like the third or fourth round, whatever it is, and then he's that vertical threat, kind of like Ted Ginn's been the last couple years. And the other guy maybe I would mention possibility is Bandy. I feel like some people are going to knock him for his size, but he fits that prototypical nickel corner role, and it's a starting role now at this point. So I really did like a lot of Bandy's film overall.
Man, I think we getting some some Jeff Thomas love. He's with the Miami Hurricane fan base. He's hit or miss. You're gonna find somebody that thinks highly of Jeff Thomas. Then you're gonna think people who don't think that much of him. I'm one of the people who I think, he did have some off the field situations with the team, but I mean, I think we've had a lot of frustrating seasons these last couple seasons. And I really like Jeff Thomas. So it's good to hear somebody who evaluates him at the next level think so highly of him.
Yeah, man, it's. I mean, honestly, his film is a blast. Honestly, especially last season, the 2018 film. Like, you just don't see guys with that lack of size, because usually you would think that a guy could get beat up at the line of scrimmage. But Jeff Thomas has some of the best releases in this entire class, and if you just took his 10 best plays on the season, whether that be 2019, 2018, it looks like he's in that rivalry with guys like Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy and like that upper echelon. So his best plays are right up there in this class. The problem is the consistency part of everything. And like you said, the team struggled a bit. The quarterback position hasn't been great over the last couple of years. So being in a system where you really take what Jeff Thomas does best and you have consistency at a quarterback position, at an offensive coordinator position, I feel like this guy really has sky's the limit type of potential. I really do like him at least as a vertical threat role at the next level.
All right, so I'm just going to run through these names again, and just if you could just give me a round that let's say you were the GM of a team, what round would you take them? Okay, I'm just going to throw out the names,
right,
and then you just tell me if you were the GM, what round would you take them on? Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, DJ Dallas.
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm going to go 5th rounds.
5th round for my boy DJ.
He's a little developmental, man. Like there's things obviously to love, but like I said, I think his best football is definitely ahead of him.
So what do you think, DJ? What are improvements that he could make?
It's honestly just from a field perspective. I know he was an option quarterback in high school. He did a lot of things in the quarterback run game when he was, coming out of high school. But there's just some things feel-wise, because I know Miami runs a lot of inside zone, and there's just a lack of patience sometimes out of his stance. There's not being able to read as efficiently as possible, and then there's just some things with like his feet getting a little slow through contact and different things. So it's honestly just he needs a good running back coach. He needs a good offensive coordinator that knows how to kind of accentuate his strengths while he hits those, while he gets help in those areas that he needs refinement in.
Okay, KJ Osborne.
I'd say 7th round.
Ooh. Jeff Thomas.
3rd round.
John Garvin.
I say he goes higher than some people think. I say 4th round.
4th round for John. Okay. Trayvon Hill.
Undrafted.
Really?
Yeah, man. He's a tough one.
But he's a tough one. Okay. Let me tell you what I like about Trayvon, and you can let me know if I'm wrong. Trayvon Hill has some of the best defensive line moves I've seen. Like, I feel like he has several different moves. He can go to the club rip. He can go to the quick swipe. He can do the spin. He can do the half. He's done a half spin. Mm-hmm. Man, what do you think he needs to improve on?
I just feel like he's putting himself into such a small role at the next level with the lack of power in his game. There's no ability to convert speed to power. I get what you're saying. Like there is flashes of hand usage. I'll give you that. Different types of moves. There is things to build off of. I was expecting so much more from him this year, and I just didn't get it. And he's a frustrating one, but I mean, he's a guy that's going to have a chance because, like you said, there is stuff to work with. I just feel like there is several questions, and obviously he'll have to answer some questions about, getting dismissed for Virginia Tech and that kind of stuff too. So,
yeah, I think we forget about that. What about Michael Pickney?
I would say 7th round or undrafted.
Okay. Shaq Quarterman.
I think Shaq goes in the early 3rd round just because of consistency.
Early 3rd round, okay. And then Trajan Bandy is similar to Jeff Thomas when it comes to the Miami Hurricane fan base. A lot of people thought Trajan Bandy should have stayed another year. He decides to come out. If you were a GM, where would you draft him?
So I'm expecting him to test pretty well. I'm going to say he is, just because there's a stigma with nickel backs still, nickel corners, being a specialist type of player. I'm going to say he goes early day 3, somewhere in the 4th round.
Okay. Guys, we're talking to Ryan Roberts, from the NFL Draft Bible. Make sure y'all check out the NFL Draft Bible, which is going to have a lot of content about the NFL Draft and also the NFL Draft Guide. Just a couple more questions, Ryan. I know I got a lot of Miami Dolphin fans that listens to the podcast. So,
Okay.
do you think they're going to get Tua, or who do you look at to see who does Miami get in the first round? I know they got the 5th and the 18th.
Yeah. This is actually a fun conversation because my dad's actually a diehard Miami Dolphins fan. So I'm very close to this conversation. I felt like early in this injury process for Tua that it looked like you could probably just stick at 5 and that would be fine. You would have your opportunity. Now, with everything sounding like everything's progressing really well, and now there's starting to be some talks at Detroit at the 3rd pick, potentially dealing Matt Stafford and needing their guy. It's going to be interesting to see if someone tries to get up in front of Miami at 4. I would still say that I think that Tua is a high possibility for Miami. I think there's a very good chance that it happens, and maybe Miami packages a couple of those picks to move up a spot or two and make sure that they secure their guy. But for me personally, I feel like I would just stick at 5, see what happens. And, if worse comes to worse, I know Miami fans are not going to love this mindset. But, next year with Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields potentially being on the horizon, sticking it out, seeing what comes, and maybe even creating more draft capital with some trade backs might be a possibility because they obviously have a lot of opportunity with 3 first-round picks. And they're a bad roster. So being able to build that roster up and maybe waiting till 2021 might be an option. But I still feel relatively strong that Tua might be available there at number 5.
Okay, and then what about for that 18th and the 26th pick?
I feel like their biggest needs besides, getting their quarterback of the future is offensive line is horrible. It's really bad. I mean, just call it what it is. They had Julian Davenport playing left tackle, who is terrible. They had Michael Dieter, who is playing left guard, who's he had his struggles as a rookie, but I feel like he's going to be okay moving forward. Their offensive tackle has to be a point of emphasis. There's talks now with Tristan Wirfs from Iowa falling potentially, and if he was available there at 18 for Miami, that would be a perfect fit for them. I mean, honestly, if Andrew Thomas falls, one of those guys falls to the Miami Dolphins, that is an ideal situation. Now, maybe Mekhi Becton might be an opportunity there for them as well from Louisville. And I feel like offensive line is definitely the point of emphasis for them to really attack there. And maybe I recently did a mock draft where I had them taking 2 offensive linemen in the first round. Besides for that, I might look defensive end, edge if the right guy's on the board, but definitely offensive line has to be the huge point of emphasis for them.
All right, my man. Just a couple more quick questions here, just in general about the draft. If you're the Washington Redskins, you taking Chase Young or Isaiah Simmons?
Taking Chase Young, man. He's got to be the guy. I mean, I know Isaiah Simmons is really tempting, being that unicorn, being that guy that could literally do anything, and that's not hyperbole. Like, he can honestly do whatever you want for him to do, whether that is in a strong safety role, in a linebacker role, off ball, coming off the edge as a blitzer, coming A-gap, like whatever you need him to do, he could do. But I just feel like Chase Young is the best football player in the draft. You don't have a need at quarterback because you're going to see what Dwayne Haskins has for you. So I feel like Chase Young has to be that pick at 2.
Okay, who has the better career, Tua or Justin Herbert?
I'm a Tua guy, so I'm gonna go Tua. I'm not a big believer in Justin Herbert. I have a first-round grade on him, but there are some things character-wise and some inconsistencies, the ability to improve over the last 3 years that I have a lot of question marks about. So injury obviously is going to play a big role in that, but if that debate is not decided because of an injury, I'm going to go Tua by a pretty hefty margin.
All right, who do you think is the most underrated player in this draft? Just an underrated player that a lot of people don't think about, that aren't talking about, that you have a high grade on.
All right, this one's fun. This one's really fun because it's been a guy that I've been talking about on Twitter for a while now, and a couple pieces I've written. It's a draft crush, man. I got Justin Madubuike, who is a defensive tackle out of Texas A&M. I put a first round grade on him, and I don't think anybody I've seen is quite that high. I know Kyle Krabs has an early second round grade on him, but I think that he is such a good football player, and there's so much potential there. He came in as a highly recruited edge player, and he's moved inside full time for Texas A&M, and he's 6'3.5". He's 305. He's about to run 4.8 at the combine. That's my prediction for him, and he's got some ridiculous power that you wouldn't expect from a former edge recruit. So Justin Madubuike is definitely a guy I think is not getting the love that he quite deserves, but a guy that I'm incredibly high on.
Okay. Man, Ryan, you gave us a lot of great information here today, man. I really appreciate it. Go ahead and tell the people what all you got going on. I know it's a busy time. You're going to the combine, but where can people find you on Twitter? And tell us more about the Draft Bible, because that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, man. So, first and foremost, I want to thank you for having me on, Grant. I really do appreciate it. As far as my work, Rise and Draft, it's RISE, capital N, Draft on Twitter is where you can find all my work. Links to everything. NFL Draft Bible, like you said. I also write for Pro Football Ready with the First Pick, NFL Draft Lounge. Have all my stuff on there. And as far as NFL Draft Bible, I was lucky enough to come into contact with a man named Rick Saratella, who is the head of the Draft Bible. They've been going at it since 2002, and he's a guy that's made his living just working hard and doing his thing, man. And he's been a real blessing to me. Been a just a guy that's been taking me in almost from a mentor perspective. He's really valued my work. So if you want to listen to any of the podcasts, the prospect spotlights, you want to take a look at the Draft Bible, draft guide that's coming out soon, definitely check out NFLDraftBible.com, and then Pro Football Ready. I have a lot of podcasts and written work on there as well. So definitely check that stuff out. Again, Rise and Draft on Twitter to follow me.
All right, Ryan, man, again, I really appreciate it, man, and we hope to have you back on the show, brother.
No doubt, man, and it's draft season, so anytime you want to bring me back on, I'm ready for it, okay?
All right. Shout out to Ryan. Great stuff. Interesting things that he said about Trayvon Hill and also Trajan Bandy, because he makes a very good point about Trajan Bandy playing that nickel position that you need in the NFL. But all around great interview by Ryan, man. Shout out to Ryan. Next up, guys, we have our barbershop segment that we do at the end of our show, just talking back and forth, either me or a special guest. And today we got JT Sports to join us in the barbershop talk, which is presented to you by Amazon. Guys, when I got started podcasting, one of the first things I did was went and got this mic. It's a Blue Yeti mic, plus it comes with a stand. Amazon has a bundle. If you go to Amazon by clicking the link in the description or in the show notes, that you can purchase this bundle. Or if you're just doing any type of shopping, no matter what it is, click the link in the show notes or in the description, and that lets my friends at Amazon know that I sent you, and that helps out the podcast. But let's get into the barbershop talk. Guys, we've reached the barbershop talk segment of the show. For the new viewers, for the new listeners, the barbershop talk segment is just with either me or I got a homie or somebody that's going to join the podcast, and we're just going to talk about whatever's on our mind. It may be Miami related, it may be the XFL, no telling what it could be, but it's just going to be barbershop talk. Some of it may be informational, some of it may be me just having to check somebody over a stupid opinion. But today I got my guy JT Sports. JT Sports has been somebody who's helped me out throughout my YouTube journey, and now he's helping me out on my podcast. JT runs his own YouTube channel. What's up, JT?
What's up, NMD TV? Thanks for having me on, man.
Man, you know how I do it. If I gotta do it, I'm gonna do it. So let's dive right in here because me and JT, somebody who we always have back and forth conversations, but they're always funny, they're always good. And I wanted to ask him about a quote. JT, you said that Miami fans are starting to be like Tennessee fans. And to let everybody know, JT, he loves the Miami Hurricanes. So, JT, what did you mean by that, bro?
I mean, ain't too much I can say. I mean, exactly what you quoted, man. It's starting to sound like a Tennessee fan. Here's where my problem lies with Miami fans, right? The Miami Hurricanes are champions of the off season. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
They always make, over the last couple of seasons, all these moves get made. Miami fans go crazy, talking about how they're going to take over Florida and things like that. And then we go on the field and we're losing to Georgia Tech and Duke.
All right, so JT, real quick. Last year, didn't you say that we were going to win 10, 11 games?
I said 10 games would be good enough, but I said I would be okay even if we didn't win 10 games as long as we make it to I was reasonable with at least 8 wins.
Okay, but that's not. What did your video say? The video that you put time and effort and nice graphics and very good thumbnails to make, what did it say? It said 10 or 11 wins.
10 wins, but I would be okay with 8.
Okay, but you said 10 wins. So you can't get mad at the fan base for thinking that we're going to have a good season when you really look at the things that we're talking about. We're talking about new additions and we're talking about the schedules that we're playing. Now, I'm not saying we're going to beat Clemson. I'm not saying we're going to win the ACC. But I think anybody who says we're going to win the Coastal or we should win the Coastal, I don't think they're crazy for saying that when you look at how sorry the Coastal is.
I think last year, before the season started, I overlooked a lot of teams. I said, now I do recall saying that UNC could be a stump in the road for us, not because of the roster, but because of the coach. Now that was a game that I was a little bit concerned about, that I felt Miami had a chance of losing, which Miami did lose that game, which did surprise me because at that moment I felt Miami should have blown them out. But then I realized, came back to my sense of how much coaching matters in sports, and it doesn't matter how talented of a roster you have. And in the off season, I didn't really take that into account, that the fact that Miami had a first year head coach, and despite how many talented players you get in the off season, coaching matters. Nick Saban told Bill Belichick this. This is where Bill Belichick learned this from. Nick Saban told Bill Belichick a couple years ago that it doesn't matter how talented of a roster you have. If you can't coach, you're not going to go far. Good example, the Cleveland Browns. Talented roster, even though they did have a little bit of a flaw at the offensive line, but talented roster, but didn't make it to the playoffs.
All right, so let me ask you this. What are reasonable expectations as of right now, as of February 20th, 2020? I almost forgot what year it was. What are reasonable expectations for Miami fans?
8 wins.
8 wins.
Yes.
So if I said I think we're going to win the Coastal, you would say what?
No. I got that I'll see. I got the I see mentality.
And I think that's reasonable. I think I don't know what to expect, honestly. I think it's too early to tell, but I do like the direction that we're going in. And when you look at our schedule, it's built nice for us. I think we should at least win 8 games. I'll tell you that. If we win 7 games, then it's something seriously wrong in the infrastructure of Miami Hurricanes football. That's that word of the day category.
And then I say this is because Miami fans want that overnight success. And the coach used to tell me that everybody wants that overnight success, but nobody wants the road bumps that it takes to be great. And a lot of people think that Manny did a lot. Well, not just Miami fans, but a lot of fans in general see all the success that LSU is having, where they had Orgeron and things like that, and they think you can magically turn a program over in one night. But what people fail to realize is that LSU wasn't what Miami was. LSU wasn't going 6-7 and things like that. LSU was stacked around like an 8-win, 9-win team. Sometimes they'll win 10 games. They'll make it far, but they weren't able to make it over the top. With Miami, Miami has only had one 10-win season in a decade, and that was with Mark Richt a couple years ago, which I will always respect Mark Richt for doing that because he did something that a Miami Hurricane head coach hasn't done since before I came out the womb, which was back in '02. That's when I was born. So like the last time Miami won like 2 games, I think it was somewhere around that range. But yeah, that's why I always had respect for Mark Richt.
All right. So if you had to guess, let's give a JT Sports way too early to predict how many wins you think Miami's going to get. Just way too early.
8-4.
8-4. Okay. All right. So let's transition to some of the stuff that's in the news. Who's better, Isaiah Simmons or Chase Young?
I'll take Isaiah Simmons.
Why?
Chase Young is just good at one thing, pass rushing. And he's okay in coverage, but Isaiah Simmons can play multiple positions and all at a very high level. He played over 150 snaps at linebacker, cornerback, and safety. I've never seen a player with the versatility that Isaiah Simmons has since nobody compares. A lot of people say Sean Taylor, but Sean Taylor wasn't a pass rusher, though. He was good in coverage. He could play safety. He could play corner. He could play a little bit of a hybrid linebacker as well. But Chase Young can rush the passer. Now, he can't do it as good as Chase Young, but he can do it at a high level. And he can play cornerback at a high level. And he can play safety at a high level. And Chase Young is just a good pass rusher. Now, I'm not trying to take anything from Chase Young, but I look at things as the best overall defensive player. The way I look at players is you can't say you're good and you're the best player at something when you're only good at one thing. What makes you better? If you're the best player, you got to be the best overall player. Now, if you want to say Chase Young's the best pass rusher, then yeah, I agree with that. But the best overall player to me, the best overall player is the player who can do the most things, the player who brings you the most to the table. Isaiah Simmons is a guy who can play 3 different positions. He can play corner, he can play safety, and he can play linebacker. He's been graded out as great grades according to Pro Football Focus when he was lined up in each of those categories. And he can play all at a very high level. For a lot of you guys listening, you don't believe me, go back and watch that national championship game. He was all over the field.
Let me ask you this, because I forget that you're a draft guy. You pay a lot attention to the draft. What do you think? What's up with Miami? What do you think the Miami Dolphins, where do you think they go? Because here's my thing. A lot of Miami fans, and I'm not a Miami fan. I'm a Baltimore Raven fan. But a lot of Miami Dolphins fans, they want Tua. I would stay away from Tua at all costs. I definitely wouldn't draft him the first 15 picks because of his injury history. Because of his injury history. The man been hurt. He got a messed up hip. I'm not drafting this man.
Here, I can understand your point. You're not the only one who feels like that. But here's the thing: the Miami Dolphins, they're not pressured to start Tua right away. They got Ron Fitzpatrick. Now, Ron Fitzpatrick isn't anything great, but he's somebody who can come in there. And Ron Fitzpatrick, you can be satisfied with Ron Fitzpatrick. So Tua Tagovailoa doesn't have to go to Miami right away and start. Ron Fitzpatrick is going to start for a season. He's earned that role. He's been very good. Now, he's not one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's good enough to be a starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins in terms of what the Miami Dolphins are hoping to achieve. So, Ryan Fitzpatrick starts for a season. Tua Tagovailoa doesn't even have to play. He can continue to heal up from his injuries. And that'll be another added bonus. And also, here's the thing. There's been a lot of injury-riddled college football players that end up having very good careers. Some players just have bad luck in college football. Like
the man had his hip out of place. There's only been one other person who's had that injury. That's how bad that injury is. When you only could compare that injury to only one other player having it, which I can't even think of his name right now. But But that's bad, bro. I'm like,
But to Mason
so,
Hill was injured 4 times throughout his college career. 4
that's
season-ending
true.
injuries.
Yeah, but you didn't draft him as a top 5 pick though. That's my thing. You didn't
Here's the thing.
draft Taysom Hill as a top 5 or top 10 pick though.
And the Miami Dolphins want to protect Tua Tagovailoa. You give him an offensive line. You give him the weapons he needs to stay protected. I'm somebody in the NFL draft is about
Hey,
taking chances.
Hey,
Because
so
here's the thing.
so who are you? Who do you have in your mock draft? I know you put out a couple. Who do you have Miami taking?
Tua.
Oh, you do got Tua.
Yes. Now, because here's the thing, right?
And get injured every time he step on the field. When the last time he had a full?
But look at how good he is, though. Here's the thing, right? In the NFL, well, everybody talks about injuries, right? But here's the thing. They talk about players being bust. They talk about players being injured. Okay, you could draft somebody else. You could draft Justin Herbert. You could draft Joe Burrow. They've got injured in college. He could be injury prone in the NFL. You could draft Joe Burrow. He might be the best quarterback in college football, but he might end up being a bust. So every player you draft has a chance of being a bust, has a chance of being injury prone. Tua Tagovailoa might have just been unlucky, but a lot of times, a lot of players that get injured in college football, most of the time, from what I've seen, don't really get injured that much in the NFL because now they're with dietitians, they're with a lot of people. They have a lot of team doctors to make sure they're doing what they need to do to stay healthy. So it's more money invested into maintaining these players' health than it is in college football.
All right, so okay,
And
I
also,
understand that, but the whole taking chances. But you have a documented history of every year. This man has had an injury on each side of his leg and his hip.
and here's the way I look at it, right? The Miami Dolphins right now are in a really perfect situation to win because they have one of the lowest attendance ratings in the NFL. They got to win. They have to win because, listen, Tua is going to sell tickets. He's going to bring people in the seats, even if Tua injury prone and only lasts in the NFL for 6 seasons. I'd rather take 6 seasons of being competitive than not drafting another guy and still being terrible. You see, I'm all about trying to win. I'm all about winning right now. Even if a quarterback's injured, at least if you can get 6 years out of Tua, I look at that being a success. If you get 6 years of high quality football from Tua, I look at that as a success. Because look, a lot of quarterbacks can't even have a good 6 years of success. A lot of quarterbacks end up being average and things like that. Tua Tagovailoa is a generational talent. There's no other quarterback.
Ain't no generational talent. He can't even play a full season.
How accurate he is?
You're right. That is. And we ain't never drafted a top 5 quarterback.
Football. Okay. Let me. All right. So everybody has a knock on them, right? So you talk about.
Okay, JT. Listen, the man hasn't played a full season. Yet there's always something wrong with him.
But look what he's done. Look what he's done when he was fully healthy. Look what he's done. Even with Andrew, did you not see what he did at LSU?
Okay, so why is he the first overall pick then?
I would take him first overall just because I think Tua is better than Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has one good season. If you want to find a knock on Joe Burrow, his arm strength, even I think his arm strength is pretty good, but he doesn't have the consistency that Tua has. Joe Burrow last year, going into this season, was supposed to be undrafted or going into the 6th or 7th round, really. So he had one good year of high-level play. Tua Tagovailoa has multiple seasons of high-level play, playing at very high levels against tough competition. So really, the consistency has been there for Tua Tagovailoa versus a guy like Joe Burrow. The consistency hasn't been there. He's only had one good season. So you can find knocks about every single player, but just because a player is going to be injured in college doesn't necessarily relate to him being injured all the time in the NFL.
You're right.
If you're the Miami Dolphins, right? You pass on Tua Tagovailoa, I bet you somebody's waiting for you to have that same mentality you have about Tua Tagovailoa's injury, so they can trade up and they can snag him. Cause let me tell you something. Tua Tagovailoa, regardless of what you say, it's a generational talent. It's not a lot of accurate quarterbacks that are pinpoint accurate. Like Tua and Joe Burrow is pinpoint accurate as well, but Tua Tagovailoa is pinpoint accurate too.
So you just named two quarterbacks that have pinpoint accuracy.
But
It's
I'm
not
finna
been a
tell you the difference,
generational
though. I'm
talent.
finna tell you
It's
the
not been a
difference, though.
generational talent.
I'm finna tell you the difference.
Michael Vick was a generational talent.
And so is
That's
Tua.
somebody that is.
Look at the way he throws the deep ball.
Every quarterback is good. I think Tua's good too. But I mean, I wouldn't call him a generational talent. Two, in my opinion, I wouldn't draft him top 5 just because he's been hurt all the time.
So
have you heard about the Tua daddy them said that they didn't want to go to Detroit?
Why would they? Look at how they did Matthew Stafford. Why would you talk about Tua and you talk about Tua's injury history, right? Why go to the Detroit Lions where Matthew Stafford literally has been carrying Detroit on his back when he's been playing through several injuries? They don't.
Bro, Matthew Stafford ain't good either. You're not good at quarterback.
Hey, hold on.
You're not good at quarterback.
Here's why I'm finna disagree with you hardly.
You've been disagreeing with me the whole
before Matthew Stafford got injured was top 5 in passing yards, top 5 in he was actually second behind Lamar Jackson in passing touchdowns, and he only had 4 interceptions or 4 or 5 interceptions. Matthew Stafford was on pace to have an MVP caliber season if he never got injured. And even to be honest, he could have came back and still played a couple 6 more games for the Detroit Lions, but Detroit shut them down because they realized once they weren't close to going to the playoffs, so they shut them down. So I'm not going to let you tarnish Matthew Stafford's name because last year Matthew Stafford put on an absolute show, and if Matthew Stafford was playing for the New England Patriots right now, I bet you he wouldn't be average. He'll be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
If I was playing for the greatest coach in NFL history, I would do the same thing.
Okay,
you can say what else?
Put him on the average team, right? Matthew Stafford has been getting held back by a terrible organization with no run game, bad off the line. He's just now starting to get some weapons. He hasn't had a legitimate passing receiving option since Calvin Johnson. Now he has 2 of them. So Matthew Stafford, you can win a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford is good enough. You can win a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford.
He hasn't even won a playoff game.
He hasn't even won a playoff game. Wow, that's his fault that the defense choked. It's his fault this defense choked. So it's his fault the defense choked. Right?
When you're done, let me know.
The defense. So Matthew Stafford's fault that Matthew Stafford can't play defense.
Let me know. Can I talk?
I mean, go ahead. I'm just saying it's Matthew Stafford's fault.
So your exact quote was, "You can win a Super Bowl with Matt Stafford. You can't even win a playoff game with Matt Stafford.
He's only been in 2 with bad teams.
Did he win them? Well, you can't be how can you be a bad team and make the playoffs?
No offensive line. He was playing in a weak division. He was playing with Aaron Rodgers injured and inside a weak division.
All right, JT. I do want to ask you, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Who do you have the Dolphins taking with their 3 picks in your draft? Who'd you have them and why?
Had them taking Tua Tagovailoa. I had them taking him 5th overall. Then, because, listen, Tua Tagovailoa, despite the injuries, he's going to get a chance to heal up behind Ryan Fitzpatrick for a season, maybe 2. And then by the time he's able to start, he's going to be fully healed from that hip injury, 110% ready to go because he's not going to be getting hit at all. I think they got the 18th overall pick. I had them taking Mekhi Becton. He's an offensive tackle at the University of Louisville. He's one of the biggest offensive tackles I've ever seen in my freaking life. I think he's like 360 pounds or something like that. But this guy's huge. He has good fork as well. Now he might have a potential to be a bust because he has a little bit of Eric Flowers in him because Eric Flowers was also really huge as well. But I think the Miami Dolphins need to work on the offensive line. I think Mekhi Becton is one of the best offensive tackles in this draft class. So I got him going there. Then with the 26th overall pick, I got them taking your boy that you love so much out of the University of Georgia, DeAndre Swift. Because the Miami Dolphins need a halfback, and their halfback group was terrible last year. They rotated like 5 different halfbacks, and none of them really did anything. And the guy who they liked it the most was Mark Walton, and he ended up getting released because he got arrested again for battery. So those are the 3 picks that I have. I got Tua, Mekhi Becton, and DeAndre Swift.
All right. Hey, I got no argument with those. That's where we're going to end the show. Guys, this is JT. Make sure y'all check out his YouTube channel, JT Sports. JT, you see how we go back and forth and we talk and we debate. So he'll definitely probably be a regular on the Barbershop Talk segment. This segment was brought to you by Amazon. Everybody buys stuff from Amazon every day. If you'll do me a favor, click the link in the show notes, and that's going to take you over to Amazon. And when you purchase something using that link, it helps out the channel. It helps out the podcast. And JT, anything else you want to say, brother?
Nah, man, I just want to say, listen, just because a player is injured in college doesn't mean he's necessarily going to be injured in the NFL. Tua is one of the best quarterbacks in this draft class, one of the best quarterbacks to come into the NFL as a quarterback prospect over the last couple of seasons. He's going to be great.
Yeah, he's gonna be injury prone too. All right, JT, what you got going on the YouTube channel, real quick?
Well, my YouTube channel has been pretty slow, man. So it's not because this is a slow time of the year for football. So I'm finna start posting some basketball content. I'm really excited about that. Basketball content is gonna be rolling out as soon as the first couple of games start after the All-Star break, which is this Saturday or Sunday, I believe. Then I'm also posting free agent targets and things like that. And I'm finna start having some live shows every Saturday night. I got one coming up this Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern time.
All right. Hey, guys, I appreciate you listening to Canes After Dark podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, review. If you want to check out the YouTube channel, it's NMD TV. Make sure you check out JT Sports, JT Sports on YouTube. And then subscribe to the Patreon. $1 gets you all exclusive content. So get signed up with that today. Hey, I appreciate you listening, and I'm out.
Thank you for listening.
No more.
Remember, this podcast is streamed on YouTube. Just type in NMD TV and subscribe on YouTube today. That's NMD TV on YouTube. Please subscribe. Also, rate and review this podcast. Thank you, much love, and you're appreciated.